Let's bring in Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell now. Leader, thank you so much for joining us on this holiday week. Good to see you.
Glad to be with you.
All right, so the Wall Street Journal this morning seemed to indicate that the Democratic Party, while in limbo, is aiming for a reset as they are going to now try again to push through these massive spending plans. Having spoken to Mitch McConnell in just recent days, or Joe Manchin in recent days, are you getting any indication that he will bend on this, that he will come around to his own party?
Well, so far so good. He gave the American people the Christmas gift they needed. He killed this bill in its current form, which would have been really, really bad for America. Exactly the wrong kind of prescription for the rampant inflation that we're suffering from already as a result of what the administration advocated and the Democratic Congress passed earlier this year. We dumped $2 trillion on the American economy, which is a major factor in this huge upsurge in inflation, the biggest inflation increase in 40 years. So I admire what Joe Manchin did. I don't expect them to give up. I think they'll keep coming back to him. I've suggested a good solution to his problem would be to come across the aisle and join us, where he'd be treated with respect. You recall the White House basically called him a liar Sunday. Treated with respect and find himself in agreement with the party he was caucusing with most of the time.
If that's the case, what's keeping him from coming over?
You'd have to ask him. This is a conversation we've had with him over the years. He is in a very red state, a very Republican state. He's trying to exist in today's Democratic Party, which is very hard. The Democratic Party today is the party of Bernie Sanders. They want to turn America into a socialist country. No wonder Joe Manchin is uncomfortable on the Democratic side of the aisle. I think he's, for example, the last pro-life Democrat in the Senate, the last one. No wonder he's uncomfortable. He'd be a lot more comfortable on our side, but that's a better question for you to ask him.
I wonder if he, when you spoke to him about that, made your pitch to him, Leader, if he made any conditions, said if this were to happen. I know there was, I saw it was reported that you said he could keep his chair committee on the Energy Committee, chairman position on the Energy Committee. Anything else that he said, hey, you know, if you were to make this happen?
Well, look, I mean, he's never really indicated he's willing to do it, so I don't want to misrepresent his position.
All right, important to say.
He's been a lifelong Democrat.
It's grabbing a lot of headlines.
He's been a lifelong he's been a lifelong Democrat. I don't expect this to happen, but if it did, it would be a positive thing for him and for the country, because we still have moderates on the Republican side of the aisle.
Okay, so President Biden has indicated they're going to continue negotiating on this. They plan to win Joe Manchin over. He expects to bring this back up for a vote, or to bring it up for a vote at the earliest January. Do you anticipate that happening?
Well, that's up to the majority leader. He sets the schedule. I don't, and he can bring it up anytime he wants to. And he's signaling they're going to try to convince the American people we ought to have the federal government take over all of our elections as well. So I don't think they've given up. They are what they are. They're the party of Bernie Sanders these days. They're going to keep pursuing that. But they didn't get a mandate for this. The 50-50 Senate and a 3-seat majority in the House is not a mandate to turn America into a socialist country.
Do you get other indications that there are other moderate Democrats that would stop this bill? That Joe Manchin is the face of it, but there are others that are hiding, as Jackie Heinrich just suggested, that would also step up and stop this massive social spending bill?
Honestly, I think we're down to just 2 moderate Democrats left in the Senate, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. I don't think there are any left except those
John
2.
Tester's one of them, who's brought up inflation as a big problem he sees with a massive spending bill like this, there are others, obviously, that would be at risk for voting yes for something like this?
I would think all of them would be at risk for voting for this. This is not what the American people voted for last year. It's not what they want now. And I think we'll have an opportunity to hear from the American people next November, just like we did in Virginia and New Jersey, an early indication of what bad shape this administration and its policies are in a purple state like Virginia and a blue state like New Jersey. I think the American people are extremely unhappy with the direction this administration is taking.
Leader McConnell, that brings me to the latest Biden approval ratings. I'll put them up on the screen for our viewers. Do you approve of the job Joe Biden is doing as president? His approval rating has dropped to 41%. Approval rating by party, Democrats still at 87%, while Republicans have dropped to 4%. Independents, notably, have dropped to 29%. What does this mean, Leader McConnell, for your party's chances in the midterm elections?
Well, if you look at American history, the 2 years into any new administration tend to be pretty rocky. Only 3 times in American history has the party of the president gained any seats 2 years in to a first term. We got a 50-50 Senate now. I think the atmosphere, the environment for a midterm correction is going to be dramatic. And I think there's a great likelihood the House will flip and a high likelihood the Senate will as well. And the good thing about that for the American people is that will ensure that President Biden, for the last 2 years of his term, is indeed the moderate he claimed to be when he ran for president.
Senator, I also want to ask you about John Thune. Politico has a story this morning that there's an urgent request for John Thune to not leave. There are rumblings that he may have plans to retire. The latest that we're hearing is that his wife wants him to retire. She's done with it, reportedly. We're seeing, what is your message to John Thune to remain with you?
Well, his party needs him in the Senate, and the country needs him in the Senate. And I hope that Senator Thune will indeed, after the holidays, announce he's going to run for re-election.
Okay, so no indication of retirement there. I also want to ask you, and consider this a little bit of rapid fire, we want to check in on the folks of Kentucky. How are you doing with relief efforts there, knowing that a lot of federal relief has been requested for your state, sir?
I spent 2 days touring the tornado-ravaged part of western Kentucky a few days ago. The early relief has been handled well by the administration. What I worry about is kind of losing interest over a period of time. We've got a major rebuilding effort to do in Mayfield and in Dawson Springs, and this is going to take a long time. At the federal level, I'm going to do everything I can, and I know others will, to try to help finish the job of rebuilding these fine communities.
Leader McConnell, there has been some criticism of your colleagues in the Senate, Rand Paul, for what some are pointing out as hypocrisy. Over the years, he has voted no for federal relief in other natural disasters like Hurricane Sandy, and now he's requesting it for his state. How do you respond to that, sir?
Well, you'll have to ask Rand. I do think Rand has been a principled conservative in the sense that he is deeply concerned about the deficit and federal spending, and he's a big boy. He can handle himself, and I'm sure he will.
Want to finally ask you about Donald Trump and the shadow under which you continue to lead in the Senate. And I wonder what that's like for you, Senator, if you can just give us some color as we enter the midterm election year and wrap 2021.
Oh, look, we're focusing on the present and the future. This administration, what it's doing to the country, how we feel about it. I'm focused on where we are right now and where we're going to be in 22.
Okay, and you told us here first, you made your predictions. The House, you say, likely to flip. Appreciate your time. Leader McConnell, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
Pleasure to have you on. Thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.